This December, I made the decision to apply to master's programs in policy. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, but kept putting off every season. I finally found the motivation to go through the process, and it reminded me of everything I disliked about university. The most daunting and annoying part of applying to graduate school was definitely all the essays I needed to write. And I like writing. I have a blog. I write quite routinely. But the essays that grad schools ask for are just so pretentious, cringe. They're just not fun things to write about. I feel like they always ask you to describe scenarios that are just not realistic, and they're not representative of how life works. I want to go through some of the essay questions I received and show you what I'm talking about. These essay questions have also been a little bit modified from the original. I'm a bit superstitious and I don't want to reveal which schools I apply to before I get responses from them. So I don't want you to go figuring it out based on the questions that I give you. So the first question I want to go through starts off very straightforward. The question asks me to describe a time when I experienced a setback or an obstacle from reaching a goal. And how did I respond? That seems like pretty normal. But then the second part of the question asks, and in what way did that experience influence your professional or academic career? Limit your response to 250 words. I think the second part creates a connection between adversity and professional development in such a way that people don't actually experience in real life. It's very normal for people to experience setbacks, but it's just not the case that after you experience that setback, you reevaluate your entire career or educational journey. And trying to say that a single moment did inspire you to pursue grad school or change your professional direction seems really forced. Let me give you a personal example. In a previous job I had, I got grilled pretty hard by a supervisor because I decided to ignore the corporate chain of command. I did this because in previous jobs I had, there was no chain of command. But that experience, or setback, taught me that in some environments, I do need to consider the chain of command. But that didn't make me want to pursue grad school. The flip side of this sounds just as contrived. Say you did have a traumatic episode. To then say that that made you go to graduate school sounds just as weird. Let me run through one more question to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to read through it because it's a bit confusing. Describe an experience that challenged your existing beliefs. What prompted this shift in thinking, and how did it alter your perspective? Again, this seems pretty straightforward, but it annoys me because it just doesn't reflect how people think. Or at least it encourages bad thinking. Most people do not have a single interaction or a single experience that alters their view of the world. And if it does, it suggests that they had a very fickle relationship with their belief to begin with. In general, what bothers me about a lot of the questions I see in these grad school applications is that they come off incredibly self-centered. Even when it's something like a policy degree, which should be about improving communities or helping people or discussing how laws need to be modified. The questions ask, how did an experience impact you? And I think this feeds into a sense of elitism that I've seen in academia, and something that perpetuates a main character syndrome from people that attend it. I can remember back when I was in university that there is this idea that everything you do in college is the most important, most critical thing in your life. And for many students who grew up in pretty mundane environments, it might be the most critical, important thing they've ever done in their life. And I think this is why some people develop a cult-like obsession with their university. There's this meme of the Ivy League student that makes it their entire personality. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's actually fostered by the universities themselves through questions like this, and then through the culture that you experience once you're there. For my undergrad, I went to Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, a small engineering school in upstate New York. And looking back, even though the school was not an Ivy League, it still had an insane amount of pride, and I would go ahead and say arrogance. The motto of the school at the time was, "Why not change the world?" As though the thing that was going to make you change the world was 1 4-year academic journey in this arbitrary school in upstate New York. I've been out of college now for a little over 8 years. And in that time, I've worked in government, private industry, at startups. I guess I haven't worked at nonprofits. That's the one I still need to tick off the list. And something I've learned through that experience is that big changes don't happen because of one person who got one degree at one university, who had the right conversation with the right person and changed their mind, or because someone had some traumatic life experience and then decided to pursue a PhD. That one I've actually never seen. In real life, change happens because of a lot of committed people all working together on a really hard problem for a long time. And especially in policy, it's people working on that problem for decades and not experiencing one setback, but many that slowly shift their approach to solving a problem. If I was evaluating potential college students, I would look for collaborative elements in their professional or academic experience. Especially in policy, I would be interested in seeing how they have helped communities build up, how they have leveraged different strengths on teams, how long have they worked on a single problem. Especially in our world of keyboard warriors and TikTok, I need someone who has a long attention span and can work on a single problem for a long time. Let me know in the comments what essay questions you would design or you would want to see from a university application. I feel like this is a hot topic that doesn't get enough scrutiny. Again, going back to the elitist mentality of a lot of these institutions and universities, I think there is this belief that we need to almost like grovel to get into these institutions. The experience itself is pretty drudgerous. You need to write a ton of essays, you need to take these entrance exams, then you need to pay them for the application fee, then you're paying them for the service. And at each step, there's this high degree of entitlement from the institution. And I somewhat understand the perspective of the university as well. They get a ton of applicants. They want to make sure they're picking the most committed ones, I suppose. And they need to spend time reviewing essays, and that takes time and money. But we get so caught up in the application part of it that once we're done with it, once we've submitted the essays, submitted the reference letters and the GRE scores and paid them like $200, we just want to forget all about it. We stop, we take a breath. But I don't think there is much of an opportunity to provide that more critical feedback. So again, I'd love to know from you, when you applied to school, whether it was graduate or undergrad, what did you think of the application process? What did you think of the writing material you had to submit? Yeah, what are your thoughts on the current state of applying to universities? That's it for this vlog. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys whenever I make a next video.